And we're live. Welcome to the Team Tank podcast. We have with us here today Jameison Welsh. We had, a couple weeks ago, we had Jabari A. Davis on here, who's no slouch himself, and he went out of his way to say that Jameison is the hardest working man in show business. Jameison, go ahead and plug everything that you're doing right now.
Well, Jabari's way too kind, man. Jabari's a good dude, man. It's one of my best friends within the industry and outside the industry. This is a person, a really good person. But believe the hype NBA is always going to be home. That's where we cover games at, do podcasts, and we do a lot of good things. I actually had the pleasure of being having one of my interviews featured on ESPN last year, so it was pretty cool. Fox Sports Vegas on Monday and Wednesday mornings talk mainly basketball, college, and pro basketball in the mornings out here in Vegas. Fox Sports 670 a.m. Tuesday mornings, Fox Sports 1340 a.m. in New Mexico, and like Thursday through Saturday or Sunday, we have KOAL 750 in Utah talking NBA. We have our NBA show called the Triple J show, and also we have Jordan's Drive Time Sports Show. I make numerous segments a week, so it's pretty busy. There's always something going on. It's always fun though. It makes the time go by fast.
Yeah, I always laugh. I mean, we were talking a little bit before we came on air here how it's like with celebrities, for whatever reason, they become millionaires and they get stuff thrown at them left and right. With this industry, it's like you get your first job and you break your back week after week after week after week trying to get your first job, and then once you get that first job, people just, hey, you want to come on? Sure, yeah. And then before you know it, you have that list that just rolls out when it hits the floor of things to do every week. But we talk sports, so we can't complain that much, right?
Well, I mean, it's a fun gig. I mean, you get a lot of perks. You get a lot of things that are good. I mean, for those that cover events, you get unlimited access. You get access that people would love to have, and you get to form relationships with people. In different cities, different states, different players. There are certain players that I know on a pretty cool basis, and that's because I was able to cover them from when they first got into the league at Summer League, and now they are playing rotation minutes for teams, and you get to know people. And then, of course, being from Southern California, it seems like everybody knows everyone. So next thing you know, you say, oh, yeah, I know such and such. And you bring up someone's name, and then next thing you know, that person remembers you from knowing that person, and then all of a sudden, that's a connect, that's a contact. And it's a really good situation. It's not a bad situation at all.
Yeah, and I would say from your perspective, and you can go ahead and hit on this a little bit more, but for a lot of people from the outside in, you see athletes as kind of faceless, even though their face is printed everywhere for people to see. Just talk about building that relationship and things that people wouldn't necessarily know. Not about individual athletes. I'm not going to throw you on the hook there, but just that relationship and everything that's brought. Is that your favorite part of your job right now?
Well, honestly, the favorite part is, that is definitely part of it. Being able to know someone kind of on a personal side and being able to talk about many different things with people. But also, my biggest thing is you have to work a certain type of way to form that relationship. Sometimes things just don't happen doing the regular, job description, getting content and writing about it or whatever. You have to get there early, stay late, ask really smart questions, have a plan and go with it. I always tell people, have a plan whenever you're going to interview players or interview anyone, but especially interviewing players or coaches or whatever it may be. Have a plan and try to execute it. If you know you got 2 minutes, make sure you have 3 or 4 really good questions, and then go from there. If you get more time, then be prepared for that. But always have a plan, always execute, and then also at the same time, the first impression is everything. When it comes to meeting someone, especially a really good basketball player, this is someone that's even someone that's a fringe basketball player, someone that's let's say a guy that maybe not in the league next year. You always want to have a plan, always want to execute, because you just never know. You never know when you're going to run into someone. You never know when such and such gets traded, or such maybe even out the league, or maybe in summer league or wherever. It's always good to make a good impression on whoever you come across.
And I always felt, you talk about fringe players and good players and all that stuff and stuff beyond the game that people don't quite realize with these guys. I always thought Andrew Bynum took kind of a unfair rap for having interests outside the game. Those guys are my favorite guys to cover. I mean, the guys who say interesting things that aren't just, like Russell Wilson when he sits in front of a camera and says, thanks the Lord for his opportunity every single interview. eventually it gets kind of old, and Bynum keeping it more real and all that good stuff. I mean, what did you think? Did you think he got fairly or unfairly criticized his time in LA?
Well, when it comes to Bynum, there's stuff that I mean a lot of people don't understand, but I give Bynum a little bit of leeway only because he went through so much stuff with the injuries. That's the thing. He got hurt so much, and there's so many things that took place. I mean, I believe he had two really serious knee injuries as a Laker where he missed time, at least two, to my knowledge. Two, not three. So when you're a young person, even though he won championships and whatnot, he went through so much, and then coming back and playing rather well. I mean, whenever he came back from the injuries, he played very well. I mean, for guys that blew out their knee or had serious knee injuries, he came back and played well. I think he had more of a carefree type of, personality, and Phil Jackson and Kobe in his prime kind of held that together as much as they could. But once Phil left and Mike Brown came, and then Bynum was getting number one option type touches, all hell broke loose, and there was no chance of reining him in, and that was the problem. There was no chance of reining him in. They made him pretty much the second option behind Kobe, and he was getting a lot of touches early and often. He even made All-Star team, so there's a lot of things with Bynum. I don't really fault him for that. I fault him for him not growing up eventually, because now he's 26 years old. He's not even in the league, and this is a league where we got a lot of guys that are 6'11", 7 foot that can't play. This guy can, and he can't even sniff a tryout.
Right. Yeah. And yeah. I mean, I totally agree that I'm not going to take all the onus away from the player. I mean, at the end of the day, it is the guy's job to be mature and be a professional and all that. And then more about those injuries, the type of injuries they were had to be frustrating, right? I mean, they had the one where he landed on Lamar Odom's foot and twisted, subluxated his. Dislocated his knee, and then the second time Kobe's driving to the basket and happens to fall and go directly into Bynum, and then for whatever reason he got labeled injury prone, but both of those were freak injuries, and then after that you're playing from behind, and he came back and he played hurt, and yeah, I would say Phil Jackson leaving. If you were to ask him now, and I know Bynum doesn't do very many interviews, but if you were to ask him now, I'd wonder what he would say about Phil Jackson leaving and the effect that had on his career. Had Phil Jackson stuck around, do you think we're looking at a different player?
Kind of, sort of. Only because, you know what? Eventually, guys got to grow up. Like, I mean, Phil's not going to be there forever. He can't babysit the guy forever. Eventually, guys got to grow up. But even remember this. One time he was hurt, and I believe it was the '09, I think it was the '09 season. And he got hurt. Kobe drove into it. I think he got hurt, I believe. And what took place was, I mean, in the middle of the season, the Lakers, I think, are on the road. He's at the Playboy Mansion with a chick on his arms. And it's like, all right, well, the team's playing hard. You're at the Playboy Mansion. Like, certain things he just never got. And I think that was part of that was just a maturity factor. I just don't think he ever really matured. But he's a guy that really never could have handled success, because you got to remember, when Mike Brown came and they slowed the game down even more than the Triangle already did, and they threw it down to him a lot, and he was having pretty good games and having pretty good outpoints every night. He really didn't know how to handle that. It seemed like he struggled with handling success, and that to me was an issue. I think that he didn't know how to handle that long term, and I thought that was a bit of an issue. And I think Phil could have helped in that regard. I think Phil could have helped, but because Mike Brown really didn't have a chance in that situation. But no, Bynum, for his talents, I just wish that I wish he could have stayed healthy, because who knows, if he could have stayed healthy, he's probably a top 3 center in the league right now. But also, I just wish that the way things broke down, I wish things would have went differently for him, because he was actually seemed like a pretty nice person, pretty smart guy. Things just didn't work out, and now he's not even in the league, which is crazy to believe, because there's so many teams that need bigs. I mean, JaVale McGee has several teams courting him right now, and he's trash. So it's very odd right now.
It is, and yeah, I mean, there's always a zillion variables, and then the next thing we're going to talk about here is all the variables that came into Kobe becoming Kobe. I wanted to hit on this Muse documentary that just aired out on Saturday. What was your number one takeaway, would you say, from everything? I mean, he got way more in depth than I thought he would.
Well, first of all, Kobe is older now, and he is at a point of his life and career where he can realize that, maybe whatever I was doing earlier in my career, maybe I can go a different direction. Maybe I can go a different route. and I can let people know what was really going on during these, first part of his career or years and of his life. And I think it was really cool. I thought it makes sense. A lot of things made sense. Him growing up in a different country, really not having a whole lot of friends, and basketball was really his falling back. That's what made him, that was his sanctuary. That's what made him feel comfortable. So he always had basketball to fall back on. And eventually that almost became a bad thing because you kind of want to know people and learn people and to get along with others. So it was kind of to me, it was really good. I mean, from the whole stuff with the case in Colorado and what happened with his family and, the miscarriage and stuff like that. There was a lot of stuff. It was really, I was very impressed. I was very impressed with how it was put together. I haven't heard a bad thing on it yet. So it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I was. There were so many things on there that you're watching and you sit there and you say, okay, all right, I could see where he's coming from. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I know you moved out to Vegas. You're originally from the Los Angeles area, right?
That's correct. I'm from LA, and I grew up I split time between Pomona and LA. My mom lives in the Pomona Dime Bar area. My dad's side of the family lives in LA, so I split time between both. I've lived in both areas for numerous years, so I know a lot. I remember Kobe. I remember Kobe's first game. I remember Kobe playing a preseason game in Hawaii. So I remember all that stuff.
Right, and what I was going to get to, and I could just imagine for poor Kobe, it's one thing to move zip codes and time zones, but he was moving countries, right? Because his dad was pursuing his career as a basketball player. He was trying to stretch that out as long as he possibly could. Man, it was nice to see him finally open up, because you see all these different levels to a guy who, most people thought they knew and everybody tried to say they knew. And yeah, this was him finally saying, you know what, you didn't quite get it. Here's me. This is me on my own terms. That was incredible. Did you have a favorite part of the documentary?
Well, I had several favorite parts, but the crazy part is this. I mean, you think about it like this. When it comes to Kobe, I mean, moving different countries and then also having to learn pretty much a different language, and also the slang part of language too. If you play basketball or you're playing basketball in Philadelphia, you got to pick up on a lot of different things. So it was pretty fascinating. First of all, the end part, after he tore his rotator cuff and he's out for the season, he's at Staples at 3 a.m. I thought that was crazy. I thought that was really cool. Just because, hey, man, we take for granted guys that love playing the game. Like, we take for granted. We hear all these stories about, Carmelo sitting out after the All-Star game and guys only playing because they have an option on their contract, and all these crazy stories with, guys just playing out the string. But then you got guys who really love playing basketball because that's what they love to do. They're not here because they're tall, because they have some crazy talent. They love because they love playing the game. We don't have a whole lot of that anymore. So him doing that after his season was pretty much deemed over, that was pretty cool. I thought that was a hell of a way to end it. And you know what? Also, I just thought that him just being real for an hour, hour plus, was just really cool. I thought we don't get a whole lot of that from athletes anymore. We don't get a whole lot of that raw, just, here I am, this is who I am, whether you like it or not. I am who I am. If you like it, cool. If not, too bad. We don't get a whole lot of it anymore. Everyone's so concerned about their image and whatnot. Hell, I mean, some people don't even do appearances without talking to their agent or family first. So for him to do that for 90 minutes was really cool.
Well, and what do you think? Do you think this might extend, and do you think this might kind of buck that trend a little bit, or do you think this was more a blip on the radar because Kobe is in the situation he is right now? Do you think people are going to, players will stay as self-aware as they are compared to Kobe doing this doc?
Well, people are always going to have their opinions of Kobe. People, I mean, you got to understand, people didn't like Kobe from 95 before he even had the announcement of going to the league. People had their ideas of him way back when, and they have their opinions of him now, and that's not going to change. I think what will take place, I think people will be more, they'll say, oh, okay, well, he's not that bad, but they still may not like him. People are always going to have to feel some type of way. You also got to understand, a lot of people, like Kobe's teams have taken a lot of teams out of the championship picture in one way or another, and that's the thing people don't understand. Whether you're a Blazer fan, a Suns fan, a Spurs fan at some certain points of times, a Jazz fan a lot of the times, a lot of teams, he's pretty much taken the only chance you've had at a championship, and he's pretty much, squashed it, and that's tough to deal with. And he's done that for a long time. I mean, this happened almost 11 years ago. I mean, the buzzer beaters in Portland that took place, to win a division. That stuff, people still don't like that. Like, people still talk about that to this day, and that's the reason why people don't like Kobe. It's not because that's part of the reason, I should say, and that's the thing people don't understand. It's not that he's arrogant and all this and that, because there's a lot of arrogant bad players. There's a lot of bad players that are arrogant and that are cocky and have issues as well. But he's really good. He's accomplished more things than I would say 99% of the league has ever accomplished. So yeah, like, that's why people don't like him, because he's great and he has an attitude and he feels that he's better than everyone else, and I don't blame him at all.
Well, I don't think you become as successful as Kobe or Magic or LeBron or Michael without being arrogant. You have to, and to be good at anything, you have to feel confident about yourself. And then I thought it was great that you brought up Portland. Yeah, he did. He provided plenty of nightmare fuel there for a nice lengthy stretch. And I thought it was funny how he does that to Portland, and Henry Abbott, who I believe is from the Portland area or was tied to them for quite a while, writes that article about how Kobe is the reason the Lakers are where they are right now. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on? Do you think that everybody says they aren't biased, but I just don't think it's possible to stay unbiased.
Well, I mean, my whole problem with the article was this. The biggest reason why the Lakers are in the situation they are now is because of the veto. I mean, that was the main thing. The Lakers have not recovered from that situation yet. The Chris Paul trade, non-trade, whatever you want to call it, they have not recovered as an organization since that point. Since that situation has gone down, all the pieces have never gotten back to, they tried the quick fix with Dwight and Steve Nash. That didn't work out for various reasons. And then guys got older. Kobe got older, and he had to play so many minutes that year with Dwight. And because there's so many injuries and there's so much stuff going on, he had to do so much that his body eventually gave out. But the reason why, there's a lot of reasons why the Lakers are where they're at now. But the veto, in my opinion, is the biggest part. That's that part. When you have a chance to get a top 10 player, at that time probably being a top 5 player, and you miss and then you mess up your guys that you have on the team, that's a no-win situation. But also at the same time, younger players, they want to be the face of the Lakers. That's the thing. When you bring in a guy, they want to be the face. And as long as Kobe's on the team, they're never going to be the face. So until Kobe leaves or retires or whatever's going to happen, they're not going to be able to bring in a guy. And that's understandable, because if you're a 25-year-old free agent and you're a star player in this league, you want to be the face of the Lakers. You don't want to be Kobe's sidekick or Kobe's 1A or 1B, whatever. You want to be the face. And until the organization moves on and Kobe retires or whatever may happen, then you know what? They're going to continue to have problems bringing in big-name guys. But when he does retire and they're able to bring in a top 5 or top 10 player, then they'll be okay. But no, the Henry Abbott article, I thought it was for clicks, and he's never really been high on Kobe in general. So certain things you kind of see through. I didn't think it was right, and especially when you have players coming out immediately after that article was put out, saying that all that stuff is BS, it kind of tells you where it's coming from.
Right, and there are so many levels to the quote unquote hatred that went on there. I know, there's a bunch of stuff that it's not really worth getting into, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories as to why he would write that. But yeah, at the end of the day, I completely agree. There's an inherent disadvantage to having Kobe right now, because, like you say, you have these young guys who want to step in and be the man in LA. There is no better spot, in my opinion, than being the guy as a Laker. And I can't blame all these players for wanting that, which kind of takes us into this next thing. You talk about rebuilding after Kobe. This is the Team Tank podcast. In general, I think I'm usually with you. What Philadelphia is doing is just shameful. It's disgusting what they're doing. But the Lakers are in a situation right now where they have to, right?
They have to get a top 4 pick. Like, they have to get a guy that's going to be at least a building block. I'm not expecting a future All-Star, future Hall of Famer with this draft pick in the top 5. I'm not, because it's not reasonable to expect that. You got to have a building block for the future. You got to have a guy that comes on the team like, oh, okay, he can play a little bit. Like, that's going to be the guy who they build around, or at least be part of the process. As of right now, they don't have anyone on the roster that's going to be a part of the process going forward, unless you consider Jordan Clarkson a piece, which he can be. I need to see more from him, and I need to see him get a little better as time goes on. But as of right now, you don't have anybody on the roster that's untouchable. Like there's no one on the roster that says, oh, you can't put him in any trade whatsoever. They don't have that. And until they get a piece like that, it's going to be rough. But that's why I said this draft is very important. Whoever they pick, whether they pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whoever they pick, they got to get that pick right. They cannot mess this pick up because the way they're going to owe the Sixers a top 3 pick, or they're going to owe the Sixers a first round next year. Whether it's 4 through 30, whatever it's going to be, they're going to owe the Sixers a pick. They got to figure that out. They got to do better because you can't give away a lottery pick. So wherever you pick this year has to turn out, and they have to turn out sooner than later. And I'm a big fan of. I like Okafor a lot, and I like Towns a lot. But if we get D'Angelo Russell from Ohio State, I would not be too sad.
I want somebody. I want somebody young. I saw there was a Facebook comment yesterday or the other day where they said, well, the Lakers already have Clarkson. Why do they need another young player? It's like, what? How does that work?
Clarkson's a very good player, and I think he can even be a starter eventually, a full-time, dependable starter going forward. But even if you can never have too many playmakers, especially at the guard position, you can never have too many guys that can get to the bucket and can create for themselves and others. And that's why I tell people all the time, as good as Clarkson is, and there's still a lot of things he can improve upon. If they can get D'Angelo Russell, I'm not huge on Moutier just yet, but if they can improve the backcourt, however they can do it, I'm a fan of it because they haven't had a point guard in forever. Even though you don't need a point guard to win in the NBA, it would be good to at least have a decent one, at least someone that can hold their own a lot. So if it's D'Angelo Russell, if it's Moutier, whoever it may be, I'm all for it. But there has to be a new breath of fresh air, some young talent, not getting someone off another team, not trading for a guy. It has to be some young, youthful talent that has room to grow and we can go through their mistakes and hopefully we can see them progress into an all-star player.
Yeah, and that's at the end of the day. I mean, when you're rebuilding, you need assets, right? I mean, when you're trying to revitalize your organization, you aren't going to do so with the Rajon Rondos of the league, and that's the only asset that you're bringing in. He'd be an okay piece. His price would have to be right, but if you're really going to have a sustainable rebuild, it has to be through the draft. Because of this current CBA. I guess you kind of touched on all the prospects, so I'll get to the first question here. Sean or at Sean _LKR16 asks, who do you prefer, Okafor or Towns?
I like Okafor a little bit better. I think you know what you're going to get with him. You know you're going to get a guy that you can throw it down low, he can get a bucket. And I think that's so underrated with the league going to where it's going right now. It's kind of undervaluing teams that have post players and teams that can get grinding out buckets. And I always think that's needed. I think if a guy can get a bucket down low, that's always a good thing. If he can draw double teams and is comfortable in passing out and making plays for others, that's so underrated. I think Okafor is a good pick, but he has a lot of work to do. His free throws are a mess, and also his defense is not that good. But he's still young. You can work on that, but I think he's a guy you can build around. Towns, he may end up having the better career, but I think if I had to have the number one pick and I had to choose between those two, I'm taking Okafor because I know what I'm getting. And at worst case, he's like an Al Jefferson type, and that's not bad at all.
Right, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, but with the situation the Lakers are in, they can't miss this pick. Right, no. So that takes them out of the whole Emmanuel Mudiay conversation, essentially, because we don't know as much as we'd like to know about him. If you're choosing between Okafor and Towns, you lean more towards Okafor because, he's more of a finished product. Towns might have higher upside. He probably does have higher upside. But Okafor, you know exactly what you're getting with him. And, if the Lakers miss on this pick, and this is one of their 3 or 4 assets that they're trying to rebuild around, and they strike out on it, goodbye, the next 5-6 years, really, because they keep on having to give away picks every other year, right?
That's a big part of it. I will say this. Almost half the league is a free agent in the summer of 2016, so I wouldn't say goodbye the next few years, but it would put a lot of pressure on the front office that hasn't done so well in drawing free agents, out. That would be a very tough situation going into next summer, but they have to do something well in this draft. Like they can't, for instance, They can't lose this lottery. You know what I mean? Lose this lottery, end up with a 6th or 7th pick. They cannot do that. They have to get their top 5 pick, and whoever they pick has to be a contributor right away. And I'm not saying being an all-star right away, but being a contributor, being someone that can play 25 minutes a night and can hold their own. They need that, because if they don't get that, they're in trouble. You don't pick guys in the top 4 just to be guys that are on the roster and you hope for the best and are splitting time in the D-League. You got to get guys that can be difference makers and at least be contributors from day one. If Jordan Clarkson can be decent at the pick of 46 or 48, then whoever they pick in the top 4 or 5 can be too.
Right, and I just kind of get back to tanking in general. We mentioned that, neither of us, I just, in my opinion, when teams tank over long stretches of time, multiple years in a row, a la the Sixers are doing right now, or like Cleveland was doing before they magically got LeBron, I think that hurts the league, as a whole, because if you think about it, the guys that are coming out being taken at those high spots in the draft, those are supposedly the top, the most talented players that you're going to get there, right? So if your best influx of talent is going to these teams and learning how to lose, well, then now the tanking actually hurts the league. Am I going too far there?
The tanking definitely hurts the league, especially when you have big markets tanking. I mean, right now, Philly's a huge basketball market. I mean, it's probably a top 5 basketball city with the legacy they've had in that city since the league has been, around. And it's a huge basketball market, man. That's Philadelphia. It's a prideful fan base. They've seen championships. They've seen good basketball play. They've seen hardworking basketball players. So to see that on a night-in, night-out basis for a few years, that's rough. I mean, the Knicks, 2 years ago, they were a game away from a Game 7 in the conference semifinals. So I don't give them too much flack. Lakers, they've had their issues the last couple of years, but I don't, it is what it is with this season. But the Sixers, for what they're doing, and no one knows their direct plan, it's kind of shameful, because now you're insulting everyone's intelligence, because whenever you trade away your best players every year, you're pretty much saying we don't really have a plan. Like, you keep on trading for assets, eventually you got to cash those assets in, and that's why I'm not a big fan of gathering draft picks, because draft picks, most cases don't pan out as you like them to, and the Sixers just don't see what they're doing. And, it's not a good thing when teams pretty much look at the Sixers like, okay, that's an automatic win. We can rest players. The Hawks rested, I believe it was Horford, Millsap, and Teague one game versus him, and that's just something that shouldn't happen.
Right, and yeah, it's just. I mean, it becomes about ethics, right? I mean, you're still charging. People are still paying to see these games, and you keep on selling them on this. Well, there's always next year. There's always next draft. Have you seen Okafor play lately? He might be great. And, let's say he isn't. Does that mean in a year or two they're going to trade him away? And then, it just that cycle continues. And like you said, Philadelphia, I believe it's one of the original franchises, right?
It is. It is.
And when you're talking about one of your original franchises, one of your marquee franchises being terrible we're going on how many years in a row now have they been this bad? 3 or 4 at least, right?
This is year 3.
Right, and do you see it getting much better next year?
Not really. I mean, part of it is I thought they could have kept Michael Carter-Williams. I thought whatever deal. Well, I know they got the Lakers pick in the process, but whatever deal he was in, they could have probably got a very similar deal next year. I just don't think. I thought he was high ranked around the league. I think he had a lot of respect and a lot of value around the league, that his value probably could have got you something similar back next year. Now, with the Lakers pick, you don't know what it may be, because let's say if the Lakers get a top 5 pick next year, let's say the Lakers are a halfway decent team next year and they end up, being late in the lottery, like at 12, 13, or 14. Then was that really worth it? So it's a lot of things that are going on, with that. I didn't really understand it, but also think about it like this: your fan base shouldn't have to root for you to lose. That's the biggest thing. We all we're all Laker fans here. We all understand what goes on, but rooting to lose or wishing your team should lose, that's just not a good thing, man. It's hard to watch the games that way. You're asking for your team to play hard but lose. You don't want to have to do that more than once. When you have to do that every year, that's something that's not good. And that's how people pick different teams, because in that situation, I think they should. No one should have to go through that for multiple years.
Right, and I mean, you talk about rooting for teams to lose. I mean, yeah, we set up this Team Tank show, and we have our handle and all that stuff, and we very openly root against the Lakers in a lot of these situations, but I hate it. I grew up. I grew. One of my first words ever was Lakers. I grew. I grew up with a purple and gold onesie when I was, when I was a baby. We watched the Celtics game the other night where the Lakers were able to win it, and I hated the fact that the low point of the season potentially could be beating the Celtics in overtime. And if you're a Philadelphia 76er fan and this is how you feel year in, year out, man, how about them Washington Wizards at some point, right?
Right, right. So I mean, it's a weird situation. It really is. It's a situation to where it creates a lot of uneasiness, and also, teams around the league are, sitting their guys down, man. When teams are sitting down their best two players on the road and playing you and beating you by double digits, there's a problem. Like, there's truly a problem. So until the league fixes the lottery process, we're going to continue to have this. Until the league says, you know what, maybe we need to tweak this. If you get a top 3 pick one year, you can't get it the next year, or whatever it may be, they're going to have to make some sort of adjustments, because obviously whatever's going on right now is not working.
And fortunately, to your point, though, Adam Silver has seemed very open to change across the league. I've been very impressed by everything he's brought to the table. He's talked about opening up the league to gambling as it's happening in anyway, and he's already mentioned, talking about playoff reform, and then you're mentioning the lottery reform. All those things are coming together to make me really feel like, all right, the right guy's in charge. Wouldn't you say so?
Well, he's definitely a good guy right now. Let's revisit this topic when the CBA discussions are going on in a couple summers. He's done all the right things right now, and I think he's done a solid job for the moment. But you got to understand, he does still work for the owners. He's still, at the end of the day, he has to answer to the owners. He's their guy that they put in charge and they feel is right for the job. So, yes, he's done a lot of good things, but let's chill a little bit until that CBA comes around in 2017, because that's when things are going to get interesting, in my opinion. I think things will get I think things are going to be his viewpoints, and his, people who view him a certain way now will probably view him a little bit differently that summer, because, hey, he has a job to do. At the end of the day, he has a job to do, and he's going to have to do and say things that, hey, he may not want to say or do, but he's going to have to do it because the owners pay him, and if they're not happy, or if things aren't getting done a certain way, then it's going to get very ugly, just like it did in 2011.
Yeah, I mean, hold on one second. Let me take this wet blanket off of here, because it's so sad thinking about the league where it is right now and the influx of all these super talented players. We're in this transition phase where, I mean, the Dirks, the Kobes, the Paul Pierces, the Tim Duncans, they're kind of being phased out. LeBron is in peak LeBron mode. You have Anthony Davis, who looks like, I mean, a superstar, super duper star. And then, come 2017, we might not see basketball for a whole year, to be completely honest, right?
I think it won't be that bad because there's so much money coming in. I think the owners will be a lot more different than last go-around. It's still going to be a lot of negotiations, and we'll see what kind of plan of attack the Players Association have. I mean, I know Chris Paul and LeBron are now the president and vice president of the association. That's good. That's a start. But, we got to see what kind of plan they have, because in 2011 they really didn't have a plan. They didn't have any plan. They had no leverage. Hopefully now they can play the owners don't have anything to really go off of at the moment. They can't play the we're losing money card. They can't play that card anymore. So hopefully the players can figure out a plan of attack and go from there, because they really, when it comes to this situation, really don't have a whole lot of leverage, unfortunately. And, they're ball players, and the owners, they can hire the best and brightest attorneys and whatnot. So they always end up on the better end of the stick at times. So hopefully the players can learn and have a plan of attack and go from there. If they don't, unfortunately, we'll probably have another lockout and another short season in 2017.
Well, and you mentioned Chris Paul and LeBron. The thing, I think it's a good and bad thing that they're at the top there, because typically you have guys like Derek Fisher or other players that I don't know, Chauncey Billups was heavily involved there for a bit. Guys that are not among the elite. I mean, by the time Chauncey was actually involved, peak Chauncey was great, but by the time he was actually involved in the lockout negotiations, he wasn't quite Chauncey anymore, and Derek Fisher was Derek Fisher. So those guys are looking out for the middle guys, the guys in the middle of the league. So what'll be interesting this time is you'll see LeBron and Chris Paul pushing and saying, there is no chance in heck we're going to leave these negotiations with max contracts still being a thing in the NBA. You know, that's a bunch of money that they're leaving on the table because of something that's frankly slightly unconstitutional. But yeah, so I guess the next thing I wanted to talk about, we're getting a bunch of questions about rebuilding. So getting back to the Lakers here, I have a question here from at AfaBrain, our resident capologist from down under. Same question as always. Who are your top free agent targets for the Lakers this season?
Well, this is a little bit different only because the guys that are out there you really don't want. I mean, I like Greg Monroe, but if you have Julius Randle and he's healthy, they play the same position. So I'd rather have Julius Randle at the rookie salary than Greg Monroe at 14 or 15 a year. No, that's kind of how it goes. I wouldn't want Rondo. He's just not a guy you want to have on a team rebuilding. He's a guy you want to have that's a piece away. You know, when a team is a piece away, similar to Dallas, but a team like that, you don't want to bring him in on a team that's rebuilding and trying to find their way. That's just not a good thing. If you can get a Brandon Knight at a reasonable price, I think that's a good deal. Now, who knows what his price is going to be at this summer, but I think Brandon Knight is a solid player. But it really depends. Honestly, it really comes at the price. You don't want to overpay for guys. You know, I'm glad that Goran Dragic wound up in Miami because it really sounded like Lakers were going to pay him, even though that was really agent-driven. But it seemed like the Lakers were right in on him, and they were going to pay him his asking price or something close to it. I think the biggest thing for this summer is to relax, get your role players set, get your rotation set, and then whoever you're going to pick in the draft, pick that person, and also pick a solid player with that that mid-20s pick from Houston, and then plan of attack next summer. This summer is not a whole lot of options out there for free agent. I think this year you want to draft well, you want to pick up players from other teams that may have fell out of favor, maybe some other guys that fell through the cracks somewhere else. Maybe the Lakers get a KJ McDaniels type of player, a guy in the second round that they can mold into their own guy. Like those are the guys you need for right now. This isn't the summer to strike on free agency. There's just no one out there you want to overspend for. Wait for 2016 because 2016 is Kevin Durant year. That's the year you want to focus on, and 2017 is Russell Westbrook year. Those are the years you want to strike on. You don't want to really do much this year because you're going to be wasting money. You're going to get guys. You're going to overpay for guys you really don't want and guys that really don't help you get to where you want to go to. And that's my thing. You don't want to overpay for guys that you're going to have regrets on come October, November. You want to pay for guys that you're like, okay, now we're building something. So I think you build to the draft, get a couple small, nice free agent pickups here and there, and then you attack a year from this summer.
So I guess by extension here, we have a couple questions here. I guess we'll wrap up with two questions here. We have Ryan, who is comes on here. He's one of our team members here. He asks if the Sixers offered Joel Embiid for the Lakers pick, that top 5 pick, to relinquish all protection on it, what would you think about that?
Okay, so basically it would be the Lakers pick this year, correct? So if they gave us Embiid and we said, here's the pick?
Right, yeah. So I guess the question is, if Joel Embiid were coming out of college right now, would you take him in the top 5?
Yes. If he was coming out of college, he'd probably be the 4th pick in the draft.
4th?
Yeah, he'd be ahead of Moutier. So it would be in any order. It'd be Okafor, Towns, Russell, and him in any order you'd like. I mean, we got to understand, before he got hurt last year, he was doing things as a big man that we haven't seen in college for a while. But also when it comes to bigs, whenever you have a big that has early knee injuries, early back issues, that's a huge, huge red sign. That's something that I would be very careful of. I would not really make the trade if knowing what I know about him now. I would stay away because that's just a bad thing. The Lakers don't need any other injury problems. It's like we've been injury prone for the last couple of years. But if it was last year, yes. But now, no. You let the Sixers made their decision. Let them worry about that. That's their problem now.
Right, and I would say it depends on where the pick falls, right? So that's on a move that could be made anyway before the draft. So if the Lakers are anywhere in the top 4, where you could take one of those core 4 guys before you talk about a Emmanuel Mudiay, then I wouldn't make that trade. I think those guys actually, I'd like the value coming, at that spot. But if you're in that 5th spot and you're saying, all right, do I want to take Mudiay or do I want to trade for Embiid? Then, then it's a conversation that really should be had. I still lean more towards staying away from a big man with the knee, the back, the foot injuries, whatever he has, and then the immaturity stuff kind of worried me a little bit too. But he's 19, so I was a dummy at 19.
Exactly.
So the last question here is a really good question. We haven't got this yet before. This is from at Paulito, who I don't know if you follow this guy, dude, but he is incredible on Photoshop. So shouts to Paulito. He asks, is there anything we should give credit to Byron Scott for, whether it's experimenting with the roster or anything like that?
Yes, I think Byron. I know a lot of people get on Byron a lot, and I understand why. There's certain issues and certain things that happen in games. You wonder what the hell's going on. But I will say this: for a team as bad as Lakers are talent-wise, and they're bad. Like, let's not pull any punches. Let's not try to be cute. They're not a good basketball team. Roster-wise, they have a lot of guys that should be playing rotation minutes, and there's a lot of guys that wouldn't make the playoff roster on a lot of these teams in the West. He has them playing hard every night. And that's one thing as a coach in the NBA that's very difficult to do. Getting guys to play hard every single night, especially when you know you're outmanned and sometimes shorthanded, playing in the West every night, night in, night out. I think he needs to get credit for that because that, in my opinion, is tougher. A lot of coaches don't have that problem. A lot of coaches have problems with their teams playing hard. I mean, Jeff Hornacek, who is the coach of the 10th place team in the West, said his team has problem playing with fire and playing hard every night, and they're competing for something. They're close to the playoff spot. So for the Lakers being this bad and all the stuff that's going on with the injuries and whatnot, for him, for them being so bad, he gets them to play hard every night, and that's not an easy thing to do. And also, I have to give him credit for sitting Nick Young down because Nick Young is a celebrity now. He's not just a basketball player; he's a famous guy. There's people who come to Lakers games to watch him do Nick Young things, as crazy as that sounds. And Nick got a little big-headed with the Sports Illustrated feature, and now he's, Wayne Ellington pretty much took his minutes, and I'm glad that took place because it sends a message saying, hey, like nothing is guaranteed here. Nothing's given to you. You have to work for it. And Wayne Ellington, not a great player, rotation guy at best, works hard, he plays hard every night, and it gives a good effort. He's a guy that he's a good veteran and a half for guys like Jordan Clarkson. Guys that are coming in the league, they're watching Wayne Ellington practice hard, play hard, do all the little things. That's what you want. That's the kind of environment you want to build around.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that. Obviously, I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody for dogging Byron for all kinds of things. Whether it's his post-game conferences, I took a shot at him today about those in an article I wrote today. But the number one thing, and maybe you can pick up on this too. The issue I have with him is, all right, we have to figure out what the priorities for this season are. So if we're trying to, if we're not trying to win games, which we are in agreement that they shouldn't be, if we aren't trying to do that, why is Jeremy Lin closing out close games over Jordan Clarkson when I'd say the smart money is on Lin not being a Laker next year, right? So, what are your thoughts on that dynamic?
Well, it's weird because in this situation, first of all, players don't tank. Like, players are going to play hard. If you have players on the NBA roster, they're going to play hard every night. That's just what they do. That's what they know. They know to play hard. They don't know to tank. They're going to play hard. They're not that good, but they're still going to play hard. Most of them are going to play hard because a lot of them are pretty much playing for their next contract, whether it's with this team or another team. So they're still going to play hard. Biggest issue is this. He pretty much told players that, hey, we're going to go 10, 15, maybe 20 games playing this rotation, and then the next 10, 15, 20 games playing that rotation. So we let guys know up front saying, you're going to be getting this kind of minutes, that kind of minutes, and whatnot. But also when it comes to Jordan Clarkson, he wants things to be a learning experience. And sometimes learning experience can come from the bench as well. If he messes up, which sometimes he does in games, he wants to be able to pull him and point him out and put him on the bench and say, hey, this is what you're doing. Hopefully you learn from this next time. So I understand why he has Jeremy Lin closing out games. But let's not act like Jeremy Lin is Chris Paul or Damian Lillard or anything like that. He's still Jeremy Lin. Like, he's had a couple of nice games recently, but let's still relax. He's probably going to get a one-year contract this summer from somewhere. He's not going to get a multi-year deal from anywhere else. So I understand he's played well as of late, but it's still only Jeremy Lin. It's not like they're putting in some super sub that's winning games all of a sudden. They've had a nice little streak, but before this streak, it was a very rough month of February before this little streak that ended the month.
Right, and I kind of keep myself away from the conversation about Jeremy Lin because otherwise my mentions and my emails go.
Oh,
So
I understand, but at least you don't get confronted in public. Like I've been confronted several times about my opinions about him, and I have nothing against him personally. I just don't think he's that good. And if people feel about that, I can't help you with that. But I just don't think he's that good. And it is what it is. The proof is kind of in the pudding here. I mean, we've seen multiple years of him being average at best backup point guard, and that's just kind of how it is. But like I said, nothing against him personally. Just feel that he's not that good, and he was overpaid. And he got that bread, and I can't fault him for that. He made the right choice, and he got credit as agent.
right, and at the end of the day, I mean it's our job to have an unbiased opinion about players, right? And if I'm watching a player and I say, you know what, I don't think you're very good, I'm not taking into account that he's Asian or he's white or Mexican or black. I don't care about all that stuff. Give me a good basketball player. And if you're starting for the Lakers at the point guard spot and you're following in Magic Johnson's footsteps, that's a special position to be playing. And he wasn't living up to that position this year, and that's what it really comes down to. All right, so the last little bit we're going to wrap up here with, you are very active, as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, out there in Vegas. Give me your craziest story from all of your dealings in that area.
We can't talk about the craziest stuff on this. That wouldn't work. But I have several crazy stories. Let's see. I mean, man. Well, I'll just put it this way. This is a good one. The day before the Lakers Celtics finals, the first one in '08. There's this place called Red Rock, this hotel and casino called Red Rock in Vegas. They used to have a club called Cherry, and it was the first time they ever had a big birthday party for someone, and it was Allen Iverson's birthday party. And that was the time he was on the Nuggets, and the Lakers had swept the Nuggets a few weeks before that. And obviously, there's a lot of Laker fans here and whatnot. But it was a birthday party with, I believe it was him and Carmelo Anthony shared similar birthdays or whatever. So it was a really fun night. It was really crazy. Nothing crazy happened. But it was just a really cool night. You saw a lot of celebrities and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, like, they were walking out the club, and you just heard a bunch of Laker fans, like, just taunting him and whatnot. That was pretty cool and whatnot. So that was a really good experience, and it tied in a lot of stuff. They were actually really cool. Carmelo was really cool. He was talking to people after the club let out and stuff like that. So that was a pretty cool situation. But the craziest thing was All-Star Weekend 2007. Like, that was the craziest thing.
I always joke because I usually find my way back there to Vegas around Summer League time, and I always laughed at, like, wow, where'd all these models come from?
And they're trying to get drafted too. I mean, they're trying to get picked up on the team too, man. Everybody, it's an investment. Some people go to the draft, some go to summer leagues, some go to the finals and playoffs, but they're trying to get drafted as well. And you have a lot of guys. Some guys that have money, some don't. But you got a lot of potential guys that will be very rich and very famous soon. And they're just trying to get picked up as well.
That's what it comes down to, man. That's the life of an NBA player, which would drive me absolutely bonkers. All right, Jameson. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on today. Like I said, you're the busiest man in show business, so I greatly appreciate you setting some time aside for me today. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait to have you on again.
Not a problem, man. Thanks for having me as always. Greatly appreciate it. It's not enough hours in the day, but I was definitely happy to come on.
Right, and for those of you know, I mean, we had Jabari on previously, and we have Jameson here today, and then we're going to have Elizabeth Benson formerly of Laker Nation, and I am where I am right now through mentorship that these guys have given me. So thank you very much for that role that you provided me to this point, Jameson.
Oh, not a problem, man. Anytime, whatever I can do to help, I'm here. So I definitely appreciate it, and I've given mentorship to a lot of people, but not a whole lot of people listen. There's a lot of people that they always want to ask what can they do different and whatnot, but that doesn't mean they fall through with it. So if you're doing something right, that's a good thing, and just keep on working hard, man.
All right, man. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.